On this episode, I want to share my reaction to the insane video posted last week on the Perpetual Traffic YouTube channel in which Google Ads expert John Moran breaks down how Google Ads is ripping us off and the absolutely mind-blowing strategy that he came up with in order to fight back against inflating CPCs. All that and more coming up in this week's PPC Unleashed podcast. First, I would encourage everyone listening to go on YouTube and find the video titled How Google Ads Are Ripping You Off and How to Scale in Spite of It. This is on the Perpetual Traffic YouTube channel. It's episode 602. Feel free to pause the podcast, go watch the video, and come back. If you've seen it, let's continue. It's not an understatement to say that after seeing the video, I don't think I can look at Google Ads the same way again, and neither should you. This is easily the best video about Google Ads that I have seen this year and probably will see all year. Let's break down what it all means and what we can do about it. First, let's backtrack to a report that was published on Search Engine Land earlier this year. This report revealed that Google search CPCs were up 9% in 2023, resulting in a 17% increase in spending for advertisers. In other words, because CPCs have increased, advertisers have had to spend more because they're not getting as many clicks as they used to. Backtracking even further in regards to Google fixing CPCs, I think it's interesting that we had already heard about this in September of last year, when Google was forced to admit to the US Justice Department that they were indeed inflating CPCs to meet financial revenue targets. You can find articles about this online. But during this session, when they were explaining some of the tactics that they use in order to inflate the CPCs, Google admitted that they sometimes raise the minimum price of ad auctions without alerting advertisers. So moving forward to last week, I think John gave us a real evidence of how this system has actually been put into practice, demonstrating how the Google Ads algorithm is rigged to increase your cost per click when you scale. Let's listen to this small portion of the video in which John Moran breaks down the CPC and costs of his campaigns.
Every Monday, I'd hop in and dump $100 more per day. And we started at about $400 a day, and then we've increased it now to about $1,000 a day. And if I collapse this here, you'll see that there's a weird bump in CPC where costs went up, so did CPC. 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 Every Monday. I'm like, this is weird. Now, I'll disprove the naysayers out there by going into change history and showing that this is just a budget change, a budget change, a budget change, a budget change, a budget change. I can't make this any more clear. It is literal, just a I'm not messing around with, well, maybe you're doing a bid, maybe you're doing, nope. Okay. I'm just doing budget changes.
So it's fairly straightforward. When you add more budget, your CPC goes up. Simple as that. This is especially true if your campaign is successful. If your conversions are increasing over time or your conversion value is increasing over time, increasing your budget is essentially a signal to the algorithm that your campaign is working. Here's more from John showing how there's direct correlation also between conversion value increasing and CPC increasing.
This is the clicks and conversion value. Now let's go back to kind of this date range here. There's the clicks and conversion value going nicely in the right good line here. Mm-hmm. If you look at also the conversion value and the CPC, also going in a nice 27 cents all the way up to 61 cents. It literally doubled from March 25th to May 20th. So in less than 2 months, I now pay more than 2x my CPC. Now, this campaign already has a 5x return. So I'm already making decent money, but that's what Google loves. It's like, oh, you have a 5x ROAS. Yeah, I'm going to double your CPC on you.
So this signal of, hey, everything's going great is basically what triggers the CPC to increase. Think of it like a tip jar. Imagine you're having fun at a bar with friends, and every time you go get a drink, at this particular bar, you have to leave the bartender a tip. And the more you drink, the more fun you have. And the more fun you have, the bigger the tips get. Google is, of course, the bartender in this analogy. So when you are getting good results, Google will tip itself with higher CPCs without giving you more clicks or a higher impression share. Let's remember what Google said or admitted to a few months ago, that they don't reveal some of these price adjustments to advertisers. And this is kind of how it's playing out. It's almost like you're giving a tip to Google for getting good results. On the other hand, if your campaign is not successful, you may not see your CPCs increasing. In fact, you might see them decrease. For example, if your current ROAS is below your target ROAS, Google might instead lower your CPCs, essentially rewarding you with more traffic so that you can get back to the target ROAS you had before, or so you can hit the target ROAS that you want. While in the past I had always noticed that after making budget changes, my CPC would usually increase, I never put the pieces together quite like this. I thought maybe it was a coincidence, or thought that after increasing the budget, the algorithm would go into learning, but the CPC would eventually come back down. Or maybe I bought into Google's BS that sometimes you do need to pay a higher CPC in order to enter quote unquote higher level auctions or upper level auctions. But no, I think the game is rigged, and of course it obviously is. Everyone is using smart bidding now, letting the auction house, which is Google, decide what everyone pays. This is a business in which the service provider gets to decide how much you pay them. It's actually quite brilliant. Going back to the scenario that's being presented by John Moran, here's an example of how it might play out. If you're paying $10 per click and increase your budget by $5,000, instead of getting 500 more clicks, perhaps Google raises your CPC to $15 and you get 250 clicks instead. So your budget goes up, but your ROAS goes down, or your CPA goes up. This is why it becomes so difficult to scale on Google Ads and why so many companies plateau, often leading them to scale back. It's why so many companies fail. So earlier this week, I wrote a post on LinkedIn with some of my reactions to the video, and a few people commented, including John Moran himself. But more interestingly, a guy that I followed for a while named Andrew Lok, who I've never met but is actually one of the founders of the PPC agency where I got started, he commented on my post basically saying he doesn't see much wrong with this system. He says if you're using maximize conversion value and you give the campaign more budget, then isn't it Google's job here to just spend your budget, hence raising your CPCs, resulting in a lower ROAS? He says, quote unquote, what am I missing? My response was, look at the impression share. If the CPC goes up, why doesn't the impression share? If you're paying more, your impression share should go up, which should result in more clicks. This is still the case when you use manual CPC. But what's happening when you use smart bidding is that when you pay more, your CPC goes up, but your impression share does not change, and that's why you're getting less returns. Andrew responded by admitting that yes, it's true that impression share should go up if the CPC goes up. But he also said that smart bidding is, quote, a tricky beast these days, and the way smart bidding works is that it'll limit exposure to lower performing segments such as mobile devices or locations, but increase for higher performing segments. So this would cause higher CPCs and plateauing impression share. In other words, he's saying that Google might reduce traffic to, let's say, your mobile devices and increase your bids for, let's say, desktop computers, which results in less traffic, but higher CPCs or equal CPCs in some cases. I responded by saying that those are valid points, but perhaps Google has determined that if you're getting successful results, for example, if your campaign is meeting a desired target ROAS and you increase your budget, a signal perhaps is being sent to the algorithm to increase your CPC by X percentage. Just enough so that you keep seeing results, but not enough to raise alarms. Basically a little tip jar for Google, like the analogy that I was making earlier. Finally, Andrew said that while his trust in Google is at an all-time low, and he wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that, he still doesn't automatically buy what John is bringing up. So clearly this issue is very divisive, and I think there will be people that fall on either side. I think most experts agree that we can't really trust Google these days, but just how far they would go is still in question. Taking a quick break to thank everyone for the feedback that I've received over the first 2 episodes of the podcast. I've read every comment, and it really feels great to know that some of you have been enjoying the show so far. As you know, I ran a poll on LinkedIn asking what type of content you would prefer, and advanced Google Ads expertise was the winning result, with master coming in second. This means that I'll be producing more advanced Google Ads content for future episodes, so please look forward to that. Some of you have asked if I'll be doing any interviews or having other experts on the show. The answer is definitely 100%. I just want to get a few episodes out of the way, get a feel for what works and what doesn't work, and develop a good system for writing and editing that will work for the long term. I also hope to bring video to the podcast at some point, but I started with audio only for now because it's just easier to produce and I don't have a great camera. But once I sort all the technical stuff out, I hope to bring video to the show along with interviews with other Google Ads experts. So please subscribe and stay tuned for all that. With all that being said, let's keep the show going. So why is Google doing this? In other words, why not just let companies scale without inflating CPCs? If companies spend more, wouldn't that lead to more revenue for Google? That is a big mystery, but let's consider Google is the 4th largest company in the world, just behind Microsoft, Apple, and Nvidia, which recently overtook them for 3rd position. But as the 4th largest company in the world, their obligation to shareholders is to maximize profits. If they can demonstrate that they're hitting their financial targets, they appear healthier to investors, which leads to an increase in stock prices and growth for the company. I suppose that Google has probably done studies and determined that they make more money by inflating the CPCs for everyone instead of just letting the top companies scale. This is just 100% my speculation. I don't have any way of backing this up, but I think it makes perfect sense considering that they had admitted last year to inflating CPCs in order to hit those revenue targets. In other words, Google probably makes more if everyone pays them more, as opposed to just a few companies that want to pay more. It's actually very democratic if you think about it. So if everyone uses smart bidding, and if everyone ups into auto-apply recommendations, and if everyone switches to PMax, Google gets more control over how much they can manipulate what everyone bids. This gives Google complete free rein to continue to increase CPCs and manipulate CPCs and make more money so they hit those revenue targets and get their stock prices to increase. And the more control Google has, and if you're using smart bidding, you're giving Google more control, the less likely it is that you will notice those CPC changes because you're barely paying attention to the average CPC. At the heart of all this is a fundamental question, I think. So, are the CPCs controlled by advertisers or are CPCs controlled by Google? Before today, I thought that the CPC was essentially determined by advertisers who are all competing for a position in the search results page, and who ranks highest is based on the max CPC bid, the quality score, competitiveness of the auction, search assets, ad assets or extensions, and other signals such as the context of the person's search, which all play a role. If you go into Google's documentation, that's more or less what you will find. However, what John has demonstrated is that there are actually two more factors that play into determining CPCs. Your budget, which again, if you add more budget, your CPC is likely to increase, and your results. So if your results are good, depending on your bid strategy, then Google will also consider this in order to raise your CPC. And this leads us to the most mind-blowing part of the video that I'm responding to today, which is how John managed to turn the tables on Google using the system against them. He intentionally broke his conversion tracking in a way that the system would think his campaign was failing and dropping his conversions to zero. In reality, he was tracking his conversions offline or outside of Google Ads and swapped his conversion goals for a fake goal that had some historical data but was not actively tracking correctly. He also switched his bidding strategy to manual CPC with a minus 30% max CPC reduction, and the results were simply incredible. Let's hear John talk about this.
This here is a date range that I changed. I actually changed it on the 30th of May. From the 31st of May to the 11th of June, my clicks have gone up 105%. Went from 1,800 to 3,700. My cost went down $600. My search impression share went up 75%. My click share went up 42%. My conversions went from 113 to 0, which is what I want. Right. Now, my in-app metrics, because I killed conversion tracking, is now 0.
Right.
That's exactly what I want. That's what's catalyzing this. Then,
so Google's like, this campaign is tanking. I better lower this guy's costs.
Yep.
The welfare effect of let me provide extra support for you right now.
Exactly. The social construct of don't let anybody leave. Don't let anybody left behind. Don't leave anybody behind. I'm going to reward you by bringing you back up to the top. So my average cost went from $6.03 to $2.77. It's a 54% reduction in CPC. And everybody here listening is going to say, ha, 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 well, there goes your positioning. Well, my search top impression share, how often I'm in the number 1 through 4 spot, went up 76%. And my search absolute top impression share, which means how often was I number 1 on the page, went up 10%. So I don't know an auction in history where I can bid 54% less than the person next to me and win. My sales went from $18,124 to $27,099. So we basically increased $9,000. And we paid $600 less for it because our traffic doubled.
So because Google believed that his campaign was failing, the conversion algorithm began to reward him with more impression share, which resulted in an increase in clicks despite the lower CPC bids set on manual CPC. Again, if the system believes you're doing poorly, it will reward you with more clicks, and that's exactly what John did. Amazingly, his impression share also increased, and the search terms did not change, meaning he was still getting the same quality of traffic at a better position. And he was able to scale and add more budget without increasing CPCs or diminishment in search impression share. Just absolutely brilliant stuff. I'm already in the process of testing this method on several accounts, and I look forward to reporting if I can replicate some of these results. In the meantime, everyone should go watch the video. I guarantee it will change how you look at Google Ads moving forward. I think one thing that everybody should take away from all this is, number one, just be aware of the fact that your CPCs are likely to increase when you add more budget and if your results are good. If you're getting good results and you add more budget, your CPCs are likely to go up. I think that's something that anytime you discuss any kind of budget increase with a client, you need to consider this idea. And again, if you're using Performance Max, if you're using Smart Bidding, if you're trying to scale an account, you should take into consideration that the CPC will increase, which will result in less ROAS. That should be a top consideration anytime that you're talking about budget increases with clients. The other big takeaway is the use of manual CPC. Manual CPC is still there. We can still use it on most search campaigns and shopping campaigns, and I'm definitely going to be using it a lot more moving forward because that's still the only way that we can fight back and control our bids. Think about it like this. If you can maintain a high conversion rate, your conversion rate does not change, but you can get more clicks for a lower cost using manual CPC, why wouldn't you use it? Essentially, if your conversion rate stays the same and you can get more clicks for a lower cost, you're going to get more conversions, a lower cost per conversion, a higher ROAS if you're using manual CPC. So I'm still a fan of manual CPC, and I think you should be using it moving forward as well. And with that, we reached the end of another episode of PPC Unleashed. Thank you for listening to the end, and I just want to remind everyone to please subscribe to the podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcasting platform. Also, remember to share the podcast with anyone who you think could find it valuable. It will really help the podcast grow. Also, find me on LinkedIn. This week, I've also been talking a lot about this subject of Google inflating CPCs and breaking down John's posts, so let's keep the conversation going on LinkedIn. Thank you for listening and see you all next week.